for 32 years by God's grace.
Wow.
So I've got children who are in their 30 and a little younger than 30, and the last one, a young gentleman who's 22. So, so a mother, a wife, and somebody who's learned over the years to also multitask. Of course, you know, I'm also a pastor, a lawyer by profession. What am I most passionate about, really? About children. And you know, I run the Bethesda project that caters to the well-being of the less privileged children. I've done that for 19 years. So the world of children and parenting is something I enjoy. And hopefully I'll be able to bring a bit of that into this discussion.
You ma, that was a good introduction. And I know for sure you're going to bring a lot here. I've heard you speak on parenting as well and family in general. And it's from a very fresh perspective. It's very interesting. I love the way you're very straightforward. You are open about what values are. So let's not do all this, you know, a lot of comments we hear today is children of today are different. Children of today are different. And, you know, the truth is children need the same things they have always needed. The world around them has changed, but, you know, the values, the characteristics, the things that would make them thrive as adults stay the same. So let me do a quick introduction for people on the call who might not know me. So my name is Yetty Williams. I run a brand, I'm the founder and creator of a brand called LagosMums. And it's really for trying to galvanize all of us together, raising children in the 21st century and everything that comes with it. You know, being work-life balance, going to work, choosing the right school, the hustle in Lagos, not having enough time, influence of screen time, raising godly children in a world that seems, it's almost as if anything goes, anything works. So how do you build some structure within your family to really be an effective parent? And the thing about parenting and why I'm so passionate about this is that you only get a report card when your children are older.
Indeed.
I always say we don't want to be fixing a delinquent adult. So how do we avoid that? So Ma, I'm going to come to you now and say, in your perspective, what does effective parenting, what are the ingredients of effective parenting?
So let me start by saying, when we are talking about parenting, I'd like us to operate from what I call a safe zone. A safe zone meaning nothing is perfect. There's no perfect parent. There's no perfect child. You actually, most times you learn on the job. But then with a platform like this, oh, there we go, and all the noise with telephones. With a platform like this, what you are able to get is experience. And so I always want people to feel safe and not feel condemned. If they've made a mistake, just know that in these discussions, it's a free, safe zone, okay?
Very good.
So having set the tone, you asked me about what do I think is the ingredient for safe, for parenting, did I get the question right?
Effective parenting.
Effective parenting, yeah. I think that what we leave children, most importantly, is a pattern of life. So I think one of the key things would be to live the life you want your children to live. So children are very impressionable. And I think what would be important here is to be real, because there's no shortage of information on the internet. You've got every information, you've got all the theories, you've got all the postulations. But when I go back to think of my growing up, I think to myself, what did I see in my parents that shaped my confidence to be who I am today? And I would say to you, it's a pattern of life. So what we consider sometimes effective parenting, Sometimes you think you want to give children all they need. You want to put them in the best schools. You want to be there providing for them. But I think the most important thing children need is what they see you do. What is your answer, your living answer to what their questions are? I think that is the most important way of parenting children effectively.
Okay, very good. Thank you. That's a great intro and a great way to start. And I also like what you said about this being a safe zone. You know, it's no judgment. Nobody has all the answers, and we're literally learning on the job. And to that point, I want to share on this platform something that happened unexpectedly for us yesterday. So, you know, I'm doing a lot of talking around this time. Children are learning online, they're at home. We need to make sure that, in fact, my word this week has been effective, because I had a session with the principal of Corona Secondary School and Insta Live on Wednesday, and our topic there was how to ensure effective online learning. So just because your children are learning online doesn't mean it's effective. How do you ensure that they're actually learning and they're taking it in? And then yesterday, we got an email where my son hadn't been doing some of the work that teachers had put out for them to do online at this time. So of course, you can imagine his dad and I were so upset. We've been running around trying to make sure internet is secure. I keep calling the internet providers. We've bought 2 or 3 more internet, you know, we let them hotspots. So to hear that he wasn't doing his work, I mean, all my parenting skills almost jumped out the door. I was like, you're not doing what? So after all this, you know, everything shouting, of course, what is this? How could you be doing that? Long story short, for him, he just thought the subjects that were not important to him were not that important. So interestingly, his math, his English, and his science, which he thought were serious subjects, he was doing that, no questions asked. But the other ones, the African studies, the French, he just didn't think it was important, so he didn't do it. And when I stepped back to understand where he was coming from, we were able to have a more productive conversation than when I had reacted from the, how could you possibly not be doing this? So to your point, Ma, of we need to be flexible and to realize that we're learning on the go, you know, and these times have put us all under so much pressure. So I want us to delve into that now. The pressures right now are real. Everybody's nerves are frayed. Even if you are staying, I feel like even if you are staying on God's word, you will still have emotions in a given day that go everywhere from you are resting under God's shadow and you don't have fear to, oh my goodness, this is actually kind of unreal, you know? So can you talk to us about that? How do we manage the uncertainty that is living with us every day right now?
Correct. Now let me go back to your son and let me put you at rest. There was a time when I was attending meetings all the time. I mean, my children don't like it when I give them as examples, but I'm going to have to bring that. So don't say son. And I got almost, at the time he was in White Sands, and then from there he left for the UK. But at White Sands, I was attending meetings. And every time I went to see his tutor, I would get, Tobe is not applying himself to his work. I mean, and this is with a lot of praying and doing everything you're supposed to do. So be calm. I find out that the young boys go through a phase where they're coming to terms with who they are as they progress from being a child to being a boy to being a teenager. And I was literally so upset with him. And said, Tobe, every time I go to your school, the report is you do the barest minimum. But look at that, he graduated last year with a 2-1. I find out that they go through that transition, and then at about age 16, they begin to mature. I'm not saying necessarily this is the general rule or this is applicable to every young boy growing up. But I want to set your mind at rest, and anybody else who's listening, please don't pull out your hair for nothing, as it were. It's some of this is just a natural progression of growth. And after some time, they settle down and they begin to take their work seriously. I'll come back to your question. In his case, what happened was he began to enjoy sporting activities.
Okay.
And I realized the other aspects that he was enjoying were things like drama, lead drama. He's a leader by natural inclination. He was the head boy of Corona VI. So we found out that he was the best goalkeeper. So we began to encourage him, actually in the areas that didn't seem so academic, but that he was enjoying. At some point, these leadership qualities began to make him see the need to do well in his academics, because he was coming tops in all these other areas. And one day he said, well, if I'm doing very well here, I want my shine to get to my academics. And that really was it. Part of it was when he joined his rugby team, and he was also one of the leaders. So that competitive aspect of sports, he then transferred to his education, because he didn't want people to feel, oh, that's the rugby star and his grades are poor. So something at some point balances out. Once you're watching, you're doing the best you can. Now, back to your question.
Okay. For that was very helpful to calm me down. Okay.
Now, your question had to do with how raising these children in uncertain times.
Especially,
I believe,
yeah, so the question is, how do we handle continuing to be effective parents when we're dealing with such uncertainty? And what I found is, with the uncertainty we're having to face every day right now, a lot of our nerves are frayed. We have so many emotions where, we go through a lot of emotions in a given day, from calm to prayerful to worried to scared. The children are also dealing with their own fears and anxiety. How do we manage those two things, both ourselves and our children's fear? Because everybody's kind of fearful. It's just a matter of what level you're on.
Good. And let me start by saying parenting never ends. Whether the child is teenage, whether an adult, a married woman, a married man, it just changes from one dimension to the other, and the methods then have to change. Going back, remember, I said I would like to keep this real.
Yeah.
When you sent me that topic, I said to myself, growing up as a child, what was the most significant uncertain time that I remember that is comparable to what we are going through now? Everybody knows there's with over the issue of coronavirus and the pandemic has left us all wondering. And what is really tough about it is the fact that the uncertainty doesn't seem to have a deadline. So you can't tell how long these children are going to be at home, and that is very frustrating. When I say to people, how are you? I'll go back to the question, I'm laying the foundation. Ask them a second time, how are you really doing? How are the children really doing? Because sometimes we can give it all the nice words and paint it all around and not come out and say, I'm really struggling. And I appreciate that in the way you presented the question. Now, going back to my childhood, I thought, when I got that question, I thought, what is the most uncertain time I can remember as a child? And how did my parents respond to that? Because I wanted to put myself in the context of the children first before the parents. So I went back. My most uncertain time growing up was the Civil War. I was about 6-7 years old, but I remember as a child very vivid pictures of what that presented. So I went back in time And then I thought, what was it that my parents did that helped us cope through that season and come out reasonably normal? My mother had a 1-month-old baby, and we were running from Port Harcourt to Calabar, from Calabar, because Calabar is my hometown. From Calabar to the northern area of Cross River State, bordering Benue. And this was all running in the civil, running from soldiers. Now, what I can remember, one of the things, as you can imagine, a war situation is acute. You have bombs flying everywhere. You had instructions about taking cover when you saw aircrafts coming because they could be bombing the territory. You were running constantly. Parents had to pick up passports, pick up bundle, clothes, everything in Lagos. Yeah. My husband reminded me that when we heard the bomb blast, the first thing I said to him was, go for the passports. And that's one of the recollections from running during the Civil War. Now back to parenting. What I remember was the stability my parents provided. Honestly, I didn't see them confused. I didn't see them break down. So I don't think they were practicing or trying to behave in a particular way, but I saw resilience. So, and they were Catholics. And mind you, my mother's a foreigner. She came to Nigeria in 1958. She's from the West Indies. But I saw stability. Whether they went back to their bedrooms and cried all night, I don't know. But when they came out, they gave us a picture of confidence. Let me tell you one of the scenes, and that's how I am learning to process uncertainty. So what I'm saying now is talking from how a child like I was saw parents to what the advice now for parents should be. Believe it or not, that's become my anchor. I'll tell you another. So in all this, I remember one trip we made in a canoe. If you recall that by 1965-66, my father was a successful lawyer and a person of reasonable means. So in the war, he was divested of everything he owned. Now we are leaving a village in the Cross River, going through the creeks in a canoe and going through where my father did. He taught us folk songs as we were journeying in this canoe from Northern Cross River village back to Calabar. And that's what I can remember. So he took the time to teach us the folk songs of the area where we were living, which was his mother's village, to Calabar, his father's town. And that's what I recollect. So what he was trying to do was take our attention off the uncertainty, the frightening situation, and that's what he did until the canoe landed at the other end. So asking me that question, I would say, going to parenting, that we need to provide stability, emotional stability for the children. And you cannot give what you don't have. So we then, another conversation is, how do I become as a parent to pass on this stability to children? That's one. Would you like me to continue, or do you want to? I can give you two other.
Please go ahead, and then I'm learning so much. Please go ahead, ma.
Okay. The second thing I remember was that the conversation lines were always open. Okay. They didn't tell us the details of who was dying, but we knew basic information that there was a war going on between the Biafran nation and Nigeria. We had a little bit of information, but they didn't give us the frightening details. So I would also suggest to parents, step out of your own uncertainty and emotional distress and be strong for the children. Because much older now. I've had my own children, but this is what registers in my mind. So second point is keep the communication lines open.
Okay.
Discuss with children. Children are more intelligent today. They have access to a lot of information. So the parents need to create a safe information zone and communication lines open. And different children process things differently. So we've got to be able to see how the different children are responding and how to feed in to each child's need. Then the last thing was in questioning the children or in trying to engage them, you can probe without being overwhelmingly intrusive. So probe without being overwhelmingly intrusive. It's a delicate balance, because if you are overwhelming, the child will shrink, especially the teenagers. So probe in a non-threatening way. And then lastly, as I said, I've already said this, maintain a delicate balance. Even in probing, I find out that children answer the most maybe difficult questions you put across when their guards are dropped. Right. So it could be in the time of jokes, cracking jokes, a game, watching TV, and a very light moment, and you throw in the important question that unravels their thinking.
You know, when I thought about this topic, it just came to me to have this first conversation with you around effective parenting during uncertain times. I don't think I could have picked a better person to deal with this because of your reference to the Civil War. I could never have thought that your memories would come from somebody who went through that at 6. You say you were 6 or 7.
Yeah.
And you remember that so well. And that is an anchor for you. And I'll summarize some of the things you said, because I know people have been joining since then. But the question was around, how do we help our children during these uncertain times? We are feeling some anxiety. They are also feeling anxiety. Everybody is a little worried, concerned, fearful. How do we still stay sane? Because I say we have to stay not only safe, but also sane. And you talked about stability, and that what you remember from that uncertain time was stability. Your parents gave you a feeling of stability no matter what was going on around. And that must have been very tough to be running for cover, hearing bombs. That was a war. And your parents were able to give you a sense of stability. That's so powerful. Then the second thing you mentioned was keeping the communication lines open. Everybody is dealing with it in a different way. Let's not think that they're children or they're too young to understand. They can sense what is going on, no matter what age they are. So we want to keep the communication lines going. The third was to engage without being overly intrusive. So let's not be asking questions like, we're FBI agents. It's it should be conversational. It should be, but we shouldn't ask open-ended questions. What I mean is, rather, I rephrase, when you ask open-ended questions, they will talk to you. But if you say, how was online school today? It was fine. You haven't really learned anything. You know, so it's important that we ask the right kind of questions that get them to let their guard down and to answer us. And then fourth,
and at the right time.
At the right time. At the right time. Fantastic. So I'm going to move on to something else that's a little more challenging, which is for some parents, which is that every single parent right now, you are getting a report card. We're not able to hide behind we're going to work, the children are going to school, we're getting home in the evening, maybe we're spending 1 hour together, maybe. That was when things were normal before. So now, there are some parents who are honestly dealing with a situation where they do not have a good relationship with their children. And they're now stuck together 24/7. What can a parent in that scenario do to try to get things on the right track? If this is a parent who realizes something is not working, this report card I have gotten at this time is showing me something is broken. What can that parent do to start to, deal with that broken relationship or frayed relationship? Did you hear that, ma?
The frayed relationship with the child.
Yes.
Yes. So what can the parent do to mend this frayed relationship with the child?
At this time, when they are home together 24/7, yes.
Yeah. I think that I would like to encourage parents, and really the moms end up being the people who shoulder a lot of these responsibilities. I would like to approach it from the attitude of the parent. I would encourage the parents to see it as a golden opportunity. Honestly, what this has shown us is go to your house, shut the door, and see what's really going on there. It's kind of like a cupboard you have had. I've got one right here in this study. I rarely open it. But in the lockdown, life has become, the cupboard has become like a metaphor of life. Yes. It's time to open the cupboard and dust out, bring out the things for dusting. Let me give that as a metaphor, a metaphoric example, or metaphor explaining what I'm saying. Don't see it, if you change your mental attitude, if you change your attitude, I think that's the starting point. So, because I see it as a precious moment where you can notice what is going on in the lives of the children and you can set it aright so that you prevent a worse situation in future. Some of these children are being trained or schooled here, and then the next destination is sending them abroad. We have heard of children who have hit crisis abroad. Because when you have a day when you go out throughout the day and you come in and you see the children for an hour and you go to bed, they have been with the nannies, they have been with the staff, and they have not been with you. Remember, I started off with talking about a pattern of life. What is the pattern of life we are showing those children is what they are going to replicate in future. So my attitude has been, because I also still have 2 adult children who live with us, my attitude has been, calm down, Nkoyo. See this as a golden moment that you will never be able to recreate. Yesterday is gone, tomorrow is yet to come. Today is the day you truly possess. I have said to myself, these are moments you will never be able to capture again.
That is true. That is true.
Ask yourself, what are the benefits of a lockdown? What are you benefiting? What can you impart to these children that you will never have the time to do, and you haven't had the time to do in your busy, in the busy season of your life? And I've come to see this, frustrating as the lockdown can be, as a gift from God, a gift in timing, a gift of opportunity where it can either break or make. And I've decided mentally I will make it work. It will not break, but it will make. And because it means you're confined to space, and all of a sudden you see everybody's weakness. Yeah. And that's like grating sandpaper against sandpaper. But when you do that, it's a very challenging situation, but it can work out for your good.
Wow. I like that, asking yourself, what are the benefits of this? And it's honestly a gift of time, because while we could never have planned for this or asked for it, it's giving us a special opportunity to do some unique things with our children. So I'm going to ask you some of the questions that came in prior to this. People that said, I cannot be on that live call today, but I want you to please make sure you ask Mrs. Al these questions. So I will start asking a few of those questions. For people who are on, if you have questions, please start to put it in the Q&A the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. So somebody asked a very real question, and since we're in a safe space, I know we can delve into it. Somebody said her marriage is on the rocks at this time. This, this is a first honeymoon, and this is a honeymoon that is not happening when you have butterflies in your tummy. This is a first honeymoon where you can't even go swimming, go out to eat, you are together. So the question, we can all laugh because we can understand, is, you're trying to manage the children on one end, but literally, as a couple, you just cannot see eye to eye. How do you even talk about being an effective parent in this kind of situation when the marriage is like sandpaper? You know that example you said? It's exactly like sandpaper. Just so, Ma, please, as they say, help your people.
Let me start by saying I feel that person. I really do. And I hope I have the answer. Oh, goodness. I feel that's a tough one because you're feeling like you're in a prison and you run here, the children, you run here, the husband. I think what I would do or try to do is choose my battle and choose my focus. Mm. And honestly, I think the people, depending on how long you've also been married for, I think the adults can take care of themselves, but the children are the ones who need help. So first of all, in my mind, I think I would try to create a haven of peace, no matter how difficult it is. Somebody said to me the other day, it is so distressing living with this man. So I said, let's sort you out first. What are your stressors? Or what are your stress points? How can you create a safe zone in your home that you can escape into? That's important. Because if you're torn apart, then you have nothing to give. What I have done, in my case, my stressor is normally my phone. So I've identified what my stress trigger is. My phone, and then I don't like untidy environments. No matter how tired and exhausted I am, if my environment is not clean, I can't rest. So I had to say to myself at the beginning of this lockdown, you're not going to have all the help you normally get at home. I'm hoping that I can bring this back to the point of this question quickly. So, but what I'm essentially saying, and I'm trying to make this as practical and real so that people can leave saying, I got something I can work with. In my case, identify my stress points. Yeah. So, for instance, if I feel that way, I leave the kitchen with the staff who's working and it's untidy, he doesn't have enough help, and I just go to my safe zone. Your safe zone may be a room, you may be lucky to have a spare room. Your safe zone may be a quiet corner and maybe outside in your yard, but a safe zone where I say to myself consciously, it honestly doesn't matter that the kitchen is untidy. So you've got to come to terms with it's not a matter of life and death. So calm down. Then my phone, when I feel the stress, I can't handle phone calls coming in, WhatsApp, and I don't like information overload. So those are things. So the person, so I have moments, and the people close to me know I put off my phone. I just say to family, you can reach me on the landline. And I'm very comfortable with switching this off. And you have to realize as a pastor that you don't have the solution to everybody's problem. And the carer has to care for herself. You love your neighbor as you love yourself. You first love yourself before you love your neighbor. When you're in an aircraft, okay, they tell you in an emergency, am I correct?
Yes, you put yours on first. You put yours on first, yes.
So that mother has to put on her oxygen mask first. Yeah. And then she goes for the child, and then she goes for the adult. Yeah. So putting on your oxygen mask is knowing your limitation and having a conversation with yourself, and then compartmentalizing things. And please, I want to say, this is not the time to quarrel. If you've been quarreling with your spouse, this is not the time. Just calm yourself down, really come to terms and say, and then ask God to help you. What you cannot do, the Holy Spirit can help you. For those who are listening who are Christians and understand that the Holy Spirit is your helper. So I say, I can't handle this. In my quiet moments, in my quiet time, I'm real with God because he can't have a nervous breakdown, but you can. So I shout it all out there if I need to. Lord, I can't, but I need the grace to sort out husband, to sort out children, and to sort out me. And I have found that in all the years trying to multitask and attend to different zones, that the Holy Spirit has never failed me.
Wow. That is a fantastic answer. I know you said you didn't know if you could answer it well, but what I took away was this is not the time to be quarreling. There are some things you just go and put it on one shelf for post-COVID. You can start doing one by one and saying, hey, that particular thing. But
let's go back there. Choose your battles.
Yes,
choose your battles.
Focus on the children. They are still more critical at this time. They are building their own memories and what life means for them right now. Adults, we can kind of figure ourselves out. And I also like what you said about finding your stressors. I think that is so critical. We're all more stressed by our devices and information overload than I think we realize. So there's always one WhatsApp, there's always a message coming, somebody's forwarding something to you, and it can be so overwhelming. So I'm definitely going to pick that up, especially for me where my work is really all online. I have to be conscious and intentional to put it away so I do other things. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Another question I want to ask you is this. I read a book that was very life-changing for me a few years ago. And it was by a gentleman called Tim Elmore. And what he was saying in that book was that the way you raise a child has to change during years. So the principle of the book was a child between 0 and 5 needs to be taught about safety. They need to know that all their needs and cares are taken care of by their caregivers. Between about 6 to 10, 12-ish, a child needs to start learning a lot more about responsibility and take responsibility for your actions. There's consequences for everything you do. And as children get older, to teach them that the world is not about you. You are not here only for your own enjoyment. God has an assignment for you. You are here for a purpose, and life is not always fair. So what I wanted to ask you was, you've gone through all the stages to a large extent. You have children that are much older. How would you explain, or how would you advise parents to change their parenting style or their parenting, what's the word I'm looking for? How you raise your children through the ages, taking into account our culture as well. So can you just talk to us, if those are the 3 rough groups we will use, 0 to 5, 6 to 12, and 13 to, let's say, 18. How would you say our parenting style needs to adjust, if at all? Did you get that, Ma? I know the internet is a bit choppy, but did you hear the question?
Yes, okay. I think so. Let me try to summarize. You mentioned this book you'd read, And the book divides parenting into about 4 modules, which is, you mentioned the different age groups.
Yes.
Now, what do you want me to address is what I'm not so sure of.
What I wanted you to address was, do you agree that the way you raise your children has to change as they get older? So the early years, 0 to 5, how you raise them,
Okay.
6 to about 12, how you change your parenting style, and as they get older, 13 and above. Because we're talking about effective parenting. So we're trying to say, does it change as your child gets older? And what must you change yourself?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I get you. I think to a large extent, I agree with the gentleman who wrote the book. So let me try and so I'll take growing up, the person you give birth and the child, there's childhood, then there's the teenager, and there's the adult. So let me compartmentalize it in 3 for purposes of explanation. So when the child is between 0 to say maybe 9, 7, 8, 9, 10, you want to instill their minds are easily, then you can train a child at that time. So train a child at that time and he won't depart from what you have taught him. This stage of formation. So that's when I believe you should feed in as much of the values you want that child to live by. In my case, at that time, I began to feed them with the scriptures because that's my premise of living. It was inconvenient, but I tried to make it a point of duty to feed them with the scriptures. And the scriptures actually have, whether you go to a motivational class or you go to the best universities, when you put together the principles for leadership, you will find that they are based on the Bible, but translated into everyday language. When we talk about positive thinking, the Bible says all things beautiful, all things of good report, all things noble, think on those things. So I found that to be the safest basis to pick out values and imprint in a child's mind. That's your best time. However, if you have lost that timing, please don't feel bad about it. With God, we can always recover lost grounds. Now, that's when the child is listening. When the child is teenage, they begin to they're taller than, I'm just trying to put on the air conditioner here. By the time they're teenage, it becomes a little bit more difficult because the child, and try to answer questions. At that time, explain things to the child. Don't go first to the Bible. Explain first logically. As you can, because when the child goes to school, he cannot answer based on the Bible. So if a child asks you a question, try to explain based on information, logical thinking, carry the child along, then anchor it on the premise of the word. So that child has an option on how to explain to his friend. And I told my children at a point in time, when they were teenagers, if you go out to a party and you don't like the environment, don't try to convince people or explain to them why you don't like the environment. Just say, give a nice reason for leaving the party and make a phone call. If the driver is not outside, make a phone call to us, we'll pick you up. Don't try to convince them that it's not the right thing to smoke Indian hemp or do drugs. You don't have to be friendly and escape. Now, so back to teenage. At teenage, you have to then have the conversations more than when a child is a child, they may not ask you too many why. But when they begin to approach the age, and remember, these children now have access to limitless information. So when the child is a teenage, you want to be the child's friend. You want to, because before, I used to be a very tough headmistress with my first two. But there's a gap, a 7-year gap between the second and the last, 7 years. I had to change my parenting style. So prior to this time, I would take the DSTV card with the first two. When I'm going out, I've warned you, don't touch the DSTV. Then the next thing I do, I take the card, put it in my handbag and go out. But when my third child, I changed my method. A boy, I began to explain rather about because it wasn't going to work. Take it because he'll go on his phone. So we had to have these conversations. But thankfully, we had addressed values. Once they said to me, Mommy, you shut down, you tell us to just watch these few channels. What do you think we do when we go to other people's houses? Then my two older ones. And I said, well, I can say I was a wise mother. I taught you the right thing. And if you go out and do the wrong thing, at least I'm excused because I taught you the right thing and I can defend myself. But I know that they said the disciples remembered what Jesus said after he had gone, left this home. So then finally, to the adult children, I believe when you've trained a child properly and they've listened, by the time they are adults, in their late 20s, 30s, as in my case now, that child should become your advisor. Yeah. So the relationship changes to the relationship between two mature people, and I can genuinely ask them for advice because they are in this new world that I want to transit into. I can trust them to become my advisors because I've made, by the grace of God, significant input over the years. I can trust their judgment. So the relationship changes at that stage. Married women now, where we can reason together as adults.
Yeah. That's very. I love the way you practicalize the different stages. And, you know, as you said, with your older ones, I mean, all your children are older, you know, the kids today are digital natives, which is a term we use for them. And we are the digital aliens or, you know, parents. So trying to understand, when you're an alien somewhere, to become an immigrant or to get nationality of that place, you have to learn their ways. You don't come there and impose your way. You have to understand the lay of the land. It's the same thing with digital parenting now, especially with older children. So thank you for that. We have a comment here in the box. A parent here is saying that the "I told you so" method does not work with teenagers. You need to adapt the way you relate to children as they also grow and mature. That's a good point. Do you want to add to that now?
I think so. I'd like to mention here that I've written a good book that addresses bringing up children in a chaotic world. It's titled Shining Statues. Perhaps I can, I think, did I send you a copy?
Yes, ma'am, you did.
It's the volume, I know people are online reading, but the book is very easy to read. Yes. And I actually give practical examples of different stages of growth and adjustment when I was bringing up children. I think I mentioned in one instance where we moved to England for about 18 months and how it was quite traumatic and what I did in that season. For them, that was a season of uncertainty. And what I was able to do to create an atmosphere for them to thrive in a different culture, uprooting them from friends, from family. It's all in that book, and I recommend that.
Okay.
Now, back to the question. Was it a question or a comment?
Well, it was more of a comment that, you know, the "I told you so" method doesn't work with teenagers. But if you wanted to just add to that as well to just buttress the point?
I think I agree with her. I told you so is condemnation. But I would say to the child, sit here, what did you learn from today's situation?
Yeah.
Or was there anything you learned? That way, you would really, I think you would get more information from the child. So I would suggest that the method shouldn't be, I told you so. I told you so, even to an adult, immediately creates a barrier. And you want to defend yourself. And then after that, it becomes like a stronghold the person builds to safeguard themselves. So when they make a mistake, they won't tell you. And you don't want that situation, because when they don't tell you, they will tell their friends. And you miss an opportunity to use a situation that was negative and translate it in that child's mind to a positive one.
Fantastic. These are some really, really powerful nuggets. I can write an ebook just based on what we've talked about today, ma'am. Practical life tips. Fantastic. So we're getting up to our 1 hour mark. And I know we have talked about ending each session with a passage, with a scripture verse that you would read to us, and we can meditate on that and just take some lessons away from it. So could you share with us? Could you share that with us now?
Since we're talking about children, I like to say to parents who are listening, please affirm the children. And God loves us whether his love is unconditional. So can we have unconditional love for the children? Now, when we started off, I talked about a safe zone. Can you please create a safe zone for our children? I remember saying to my son, I said, even not too long ago, a few days, I said, I love you when you're good, and I love you when you're not so good.
Oh, I love
it's
that.
all part of love. So this is a young man now. So please, let's approach them with that attitude. Affirm the children. But no matter how bad you think a child or how troublesome, there is good in each child. And the scripture I would like to leave with you is Psalm 139, verse 14. In that psalm, David records, I think it's David, he wrote most of the psalms anyway. He says, I praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. So he was giving God praise for his makeup. Nobody is perfect, but God looks at us as the masterpiece of his creation. No matter how bad a person is, there's something good in them because they carry the image of God, and they are designed in a very intricate, fearful, and wonderful way. Fearful in this context means in awe. So when I look at every wonderfully made, he or she is God's handiwork. And God has deposited this wonderful piece in our hands, this wonderful child, fearfully and wonderfully made. So approach each child as if that child was your only child. And that's another thing my parents were able to do. I don't know how, but they made each child feel that you were the favorite. Each person was my favorite. My dad had pet names for each one of us, and he would tell me, oh, you would be a good speaker. Honestly, from when I was young, he would tell my sister, Emme, you touch anything you touch, you create beauty from, and she's the one who makes the hearts. Okay. So what we pronounce, and my mother was the same. Now they noticed little things that we were doing. Emma would take toilet paper or table paper, tissue paper on the table, and she would create something from it. So everyone was affirmed. And those words are powerful. My sister, Mrs. Kalango, was told, Ma, you can write, and your writing is famous from when we were, and that is interestingly how we have all grown up. I have a sister who is a professor. She was always told that you just like to study. You are going to be the teacher of everyone. Yeah. So it shows me that words are powerful. My brother fixed, when he was 7, he tried to construct traffic lights. And my dad went on about this famous invention. Today he's an engineer that builds software. I just giving these examples, please, because people keep talking about negative things. And I'm saying, whoever that there are parents, and even now, all the parents listening are listening because they want to get it right. So kudos to them. And all I'm saying is you're on the right track. Affirm the children. Give them confidence in who they are. Don't try to change what is good about them, enhance and blow up. What is negative, address, nurture, and change. But don't damage a child's psyche. Please, don't damage a child's confidence. Give a child confidence. Actually, all the problems we talk about peer pressure you can avoid if you make the child confident in who they are. And confidence is not pride. Yeah. Separate the two. You're not to be proud. God resists the proud. People don't like proud people, but you're to be confident. Confidence means I'm special. I'm precious to God. I'm precious to my parents. They value me. They put value on me. I can't follow you because I'm valuable. That's really a strong gauge in a child's mind.
Fantastic. Oh my goodness. This was so good, Mrs. R. Thank you so much for sharing with us. We thank your kids for the permission to have you use them as examples. So on their behalf, I say thank you publicly. You know.
Don't say you heard. Don't ever say you heard.
It's our secret. But thank you so much, Ma. This was a fantastic hour with you. It's very practical, very real. And this is what I love about talking to you, is that we always take away something we can massage and use in a way that applies to us. But it's all very useful and practical. So God bless you, Ma. Thank you so much for spending this time with us. And I look forward to doing more with you definitely very soon.
Thank you for the opportunity. I'm passionate about anything to do with children and how we can help. So thank you for the opportunity. I value this.
All right. Thank you very much, Ma. And thank you everybody who joined. Thank you for being part of it. Okay, Ma. Greetings to
Bye.
Greetings to PT. Bye-bye. Bye, everybody.